January 29, 1945, 2:47 p.m., Holzheim, Belgium. First Sergeant Leonard Funk rounds the corner of a snow-covered farmhouse and freezes. 90 German soldiers stare back at him. Half are already armed, the rest grabbing rifles from a pile on the ground. 4 American Gs kneel in the snow, hands behind their heads. These Germans were prisoners just minutes ago, of them captured by Funk's company. Now they're free, rearmed, and ready to hit his men from behind. A German officer strides forward, jams an MP-40 submachine gun into Funk's stomach, and screams in furious German. Funk doesn't understand a word. The officer screams again, face turning purple. Funk looks at the 90 enemies, his disarmed men, the gun in his gut, and starts laughing. The Germans laugh too, mocking him at first. Then Funk laughs harder. What happens next lasts less than 60 seconds. 21 Germans die. The rest drop their weapons and surrender again. All because one American sergeant couldn't stop laughing with a gun pressed against him. This is the insane true story of Leonard Funk, the most decorated paratrooper of World War II, and how his laugh earned him the Medal of Honor. Leonard Alfred Funk Jr. was born on August 27, 1916, in Braddock Township, Pennsylvania, a gritty steel town along the Monongahela River, just east of Pittsburgh. Smokestacks choked the sky, foundries roared day and night. Life was hard. Responsibility came early. By high school graduation in 1934, the Great Depression had gripped America for 5 years. Jobs vanished. College was a pipe dream. Funk worked odd jobs, helped raise his younger brother. He learned quiet strength, the kind that doesn't need to shout. June 1941. War rages in Europe and Asia. Congress extends the draft. Funk's number comes up. He reports to the induction center in Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania. 24 years old, 5'5", 140 pounds. The Army examiner sizes him up, probably thinks clerk duty, safe behind a desk. They're dead wrong. Funk volunteers for the paratroopers. In 1941, American airborne forces are brand new, experimental, jumping from planes into enemy territory. Fighting surrounded most soldiers, call it suicide. The volunteers are different, tougher, crazy, maybe. Training is brutal, designed to break you. 5 weeks of endless running, jumping, climbing, falling. Physical hell that washes out half the men. Then jump towers, then real aircraft. First jump from a C-47 at 1,200 feet. Wind rips your face, ground rushes up. Parachute is just fabric and prayer. Funk earns his wings. Assigned to Company C, 1st Battalion, 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment. The 508th ships to England, late 1943. Joins the 82nd Airborne Division, the All-Americans. Veterans of Sicily and Italy, already bloodied in combat jumps. Funk is the new guy at 27, ancient for a paratrooper. Most squad mates are teenagers, but Funk has maturity, steady nerves, the kind of calm that makes men follow you anywhere. By D-Day, he's squad leader, soon acting company executive officer. First, he has to survive Normandy. June 6, 1944, 1:30 a.m. Funk's C-47 shudders through Flak bursts. He's in the stick, loaded with 60 pounds of gear, Thompson's submachine gun, ammo, grenades, rations. Plane flies, low 400 feet, to avoid radar, too low for safety. German tracers light the night. Fragments ping the fuselage. Green light jumps. Prop blast slams him. Chute opens. Silence. The invasion drops 13,000 paratroopers from the 82nd and 101st to seize bridges, block reinforcements. Chaos from minute one. Flak scatters sticks across 50 miles. Men drown in flooded fields, weighted down. Others land in German positions, cut down before freeing harnesses. Funk hits hard. Ankle twists, bad sprain, maybe fracture. Pain shoots up his leg. Every step agony for weeks. But he walks, he fights. That's enough. Buries his out alone in occupied France, 40 miles from drop zone. Enemy everywhere. Within hours, he gathers stray paratroopers from scattered units. 18 men, eventually, all looking for a leader. Funk gives it. Serves as lead scout, despite the ankle, taking the most danger. They travel night, hide day, fight when cornered. 10 days behind lines. Link up with allies, June 17th. Every man survives. 0 casualties. Silver Star, Bronze Star, First Purple Heart. Funk is just warming up. September 17, 1944. Operation Market Garden. Largest airborne assault ever. 35,000 paratroopers into Holland to grab Rhine bridges. Ambitious plan. Allies in Germany by Christmas. Everything goes wrong. British 1st Airborne at Arnhem. The farthest bridge lands near hidden SS Panzer divisions. 9 days of hell. Only 2,000 of 10,000 escape. A bridge too far. Funk's mission: secure drop zones near Nijmegen. Then he spots 3 German 20mm flak guns blasting incoming gliders. Reinforcements, jeeps, artillery. If they keep firing, hundreds die before landing. Position dug in. High ground. 20 Germans. Sandbags. Interlocking fire. Funk has 3 men. Doctrine demands 3-to-1 advantage to attack. He has 1-to-7. Attacks anyway. Leads from front. They storm security. Overrun guns. Kill or capture crew. Guns, silent. Gliders, safe. Distinguished Service Cross, 2nd highest Valor Award. 1 step below Medal of Honor. Funk now has DSC, Silver Star. Most men with 1 are lifelong heroes. He's not done. December 16, 1944. Ardennes Forest. Germans launch last gamble. 400,000 men, 1,400 tanks. Crash through thin American lines. Toward Antwerp. Split Allies. Force peace in West. Turn on Soviets. Hits green troops. Enrested veterans. Divisions crumble. Thousands surrender. Bulge 50 miles in World War II. Biggest battle. 89,000 casualties. Freezing hell -5 degrees. Men freeze in foxholes. December 17th. Malmedy. Convoy from 285th Field Artillery ambushed by SS Kampfrupp Piper. 113 Americans surrender. Herded into field. SS opens fire machine guns. Pistols. Wounded finished off. 84 dead. Survivors play dead. Crawl away at night. News spreads fast. Before Malmedy, war had unspoken rules: surrender when hopeless. Prisoners treated decently. After, Americans swear no surrender to SS. Some units. No SS prisoners. Funk hears. Something hardens. He's seen death. Normandy, Holland. Friends gone. But this is murder. He decides. Never surrender to Germans. No matter what. That vow saves his life and earns his medal soon. January 29, 1945. The Ardennes offensive is broken. The Germans are retreating. The Allies push back. Company C, 508th Parachute Infantry, receives orders. Capture the small Belgian village of Holzheim. There's a problem. The company is badly undertrained. Months of fighting have whittled them down. The executive officer second in command has been killed. They barely have enough riflemen for a proper assault. Leonard Funk, now acting executive officer, looks at the roster and makes a decision. He walks to the company headquarters tent. Inside are the clerks, cooks, drivers, supply men, echelon troops who spend the war shuffling papers and peeling potatoes. Most have never fired a shot in anger. You're all infantry now, Funk tells them. Grab your rifles. We're taking that village. He forms a makeshift platoon, 30 men, who, until that morning, thought their war was behind a desk. They've had basic training, yes, but real combat, almost none. Funk doesn't care. He needs bodies. He'll make them soldiers on the march. The route to Holzheim is 15 miles through waist-deep snow in a howling blizzard. Temperature well below 0. German artillery harasses them from the flanks, shells bursting in white plumes, shrapnel whining overhead. Funk leads from the front, limping slightly on the ankle that never fully healed from Normandy. They reach the village outskirts at dusk. 15 houses huddled together, smoke curling from chimneys. Germans in every building, machine guns, rifles, Panzerfausts. Funk organizes the assault quickly. His clerks and cooks, now turned riflemen, follow him in. House by house, room by room, grenades through windows, Thompson barking, Garans cracking. The makeshift platoon fights like veterans. 30 Germans captured in the first wave. Not a single American casualty. Another platoon on the far side of town bags 50 more. 80 prisoners total. They're herded into the yard of a large farmhouse. Hands up. Rifles stacked in a pile. Funk surveys his exhausted men. They've marched 15 miles through hell and just cleared a village. There's still scattered resistant small pockets of Germans who haven't surrendered. He can spare only 4 guards for the prisoners. Keep them here, he tells the guards. Watch them close. We'll send more men when we can. Funk heads back into the village to finish the mop-up. He has no idea what's happening behind him, while Funk and the company clear the last houses. A German patrol approaches the farmhouse through the storm, 10 or 12 men, possibly more, wearing white camouflage snow capes over their uniforms. In the swirling snow and fading light, they look almost identical to American winter troops. The 4 American guards don't spot the difference until it's too late. The Germans rush them, rifles raised, overpower them in seconds, force them to their knees in the snow, hands behind heads, weapons taken. Then the Germans turn to the prisoner Zeddy of their own comrades and start cutting them loose, rifles handed back, orders barked. Within minutes, the situation is completely reversed. 80 freed prisoners, plus the rescue patrol, 90 armed Germans, now control the yard. They know exactly what to do. Form up, move out, hit Company C in the rear, while the Americans are scattered and distracted. The German officer in charge, likely a lieutenant or captain, starts organizing quickly. Machine guns positioned at the corners, flank security out, ambush lanes set. They're minutes away from launching a devastating counterattack that could wipe out Funk's depleted company. That's when Leonard Funk comes back to check on his prisoners. He's walking alone. Just a routine check, make sure the guards are alert, see if reinforcements have arrived. Thompson slung over his shoulder, in standard carry position. He rounds the corner of the farmhouse and stops dead. The scene hits him like a physical blow. His 4 guards on their knees, disarmed. The prisoners at men who were supposed to be contenders standing everywhere, rifles in hand, forming into squads. The rescue patrol in white capes directing traffic. The German officer spots Funk instantly. The first sergeant stripes on his sleeve mark him as a leader, a high-value capture. The officer strides forward, MP40 raised, and rams the muzzle hard into Funk's stomach. "Surrender," he screams in German. "Drop your weapon." Funk doesn't speak a word of German. He has no idea what the man is saying. The officer screams again, louder, face turning crimson, spittle flying. The 90 Germans watch, some already smirking. They've got the American company commander close enough, cornered and helpless. This is payback. Funk looks around slowly. 90 enemies, half fully armed, the rest nearly so. His 4 men on their knees. 1 other American beside him, equally helpless. The math is brutal. 92-2. A submachine gun digging into his gut. Any rational man would surrender, raise his hands, live to fight another day, or at least live. But Funk remembers Malmedy. 84 Americans machine gunned in a field after surrendering, bodies left in the snow. He swore he would never surrender to the Germans. Not ever. So instead of raising his hands, Leonard Funk does something no one expects. He starts laughing. At first, some Germans laugh, too, mocking the helpless American sergeant who's finally cracked under pressure. They jeer, point, grin. The officer screams even louder, veins bulging in his neck. Funk laughs harder, shoulders shaking. He bends forward slightly, as if the whole situation is the funniest thing he's ever seen. No one knows exactly why he laughed. Maybe deliberate buying seconds of confusion. Maybe nerves finally snapping. Maybe genuine absurdity. An officer screaming foreign commands, expecting instant obedience from a man who can't understand a word. Funk himself later said he tried to stop, but couldn't. Whatever the reason, the effect is electric. The German officer is completely thrown. Prisoners don't laugh. They beg. They comply. They don't stand there cackling with a gun in their stomach. For several critical seconds, the officer doesn't know what to do. The yard falls into bizarre tensions. Some Germans still chuckling nervously, others shifting uneasily, and Leonard Funk uses those seconds. Still laughing, he slowly raises his hands, not in surrender, but toward the Thompson slung on his shoulder. The German officer watches, relaxing slightly. Good. The American is finally giving up his weapon. Funk's fingers close around the grip. He starts to unsling it, slow, deliberate, non-threatening. The officer lowers his guard a fraction. Another prisoner. Another trophy. Then Funk moves. One lightning motion. Thompson swings down. muzzle coming into line. Finger squeezes trigger. The M1A1 Thompson fires .45 ACP rounds at 600 rounds per minute at point-blank range. Each hit is devastating. The first burst catches the officer square in the chest. 30 rounds in under 3 seconds. The German is dead before he hits the snow. Funk pivots, still firing. The Thompson sweeps an arc across the nearest cluster of Germans. Men scream. Bodies jerk and fall. Blood sprays red across white snow. Hot brass casings arc through the freezing air, steaming as they land. The 30-round magazine empties in seconds. This is the moment everything hangs on. Reloading a Thompson takes 2 seconds if you're fast. 2 seconds is an eternity when 90 enemies are waking up to what's happening. Funk yanks the empty stick magazine, slams a fresh one home, racks the bolt. The entire sequence is fluid, practiced muscle memory from thousands of rounds fired in training. He's already screaming at his men, "Pick up their weapons. Pick up their weapons." The 4 guards still on their knees lunge for the rifles dropped by the dead Germans. Seconds ago, they were captives. Now they're armed and fighting. Chaos erupts in the yard. The Germans have no leader. Their officer lies dead. The laughing American is suddenly killing them. No one gave orders for this. Some freeze. Some shoot back bullets, snap past Funk's head. 1 round kills the soldier beside him. Funk keeps moving, keeps firing. Short, controlled bursts. His guards are shooting now too. Crossfire from unexpected directions. It lasts less than 60 seconds. 21 Germans lie dead or dying in the snow. 24 more wounded. The rest, over 40 men, throw down their rifles and raise their hands. The prisoners are prisoners again. Leonard Funk stands in the center of the yard, Thompson smoking in his hands, surrounded by He looks at his men and says quietly, "That was the stupidest thing I've ever seen." The aftermath in Holzheim is almost quiet compared to the chaos of moments before. Company C secures the village fully. The surviving Germans, those who threw down their weapons, are marched to the rear, under heavy guard this time. No chances taken. Funk reports the incident to his commanding officer. Just another close quarters firefight. Another day in the Bulge. He downplays it, the way he always does. But stories like this don't stay quiet in a regiment. Word spreads fast through the 508th, then the entire 82nd Airborne. The short sergeant who walked into 90 armed Germans, got a gun shoved in his gut, started laughing like a madman, and then killed 21 of them before the rest surrendered again. The tale grows with every telling, but the core facts are undeniable. When the Medal of Honor paperwork reaches higher headquarters, nobody argues. Nobody questions. The official citation is short and dry, the way military citations always are. But it captures the insanity perfectly. He was ordered to surrender by a German officer who pushed a machine pistol into his stomach. Although overwhelmingly outnumbered and facing almost certain death, First Sergeant Funk, pretending to comply with the order, began slowly to unsling his submachine gun from his shoulder, and then with lightning motion brought the muzzle into line and riddled the German officer. He turned upon the other Germans, firing and shouting to the other Americans to seize the enemy's weapons. Approved all the way up the chain. Signed by the President. September 5, 1945. White House Rose Garden. The war in Europe has been over for 4 months. Japan surrendered last month. President Harry Truman stands before a small crowd of reporters, generals, and family members. Leonard Funk, still 5'5", still quiet, steps forward in dress uniform heavy with ribbons. Truman slips the sky blue ribbon over Funk's head, the Medal of Honor settling against his chest. Then the President, the man who just ended the largest war in human history, says words that echo through history. "I would rather have this medal than be President of the United States." Let that sink in. The most powerful man on earth, the one who gave the order to drop atomic bombs, looks at a former steel town clerk from Pennsylvania and says he'd trade places. Funk just nods, says thank you, steps back. Let's add up what Leonard Funk earned in World War II. Medal of Honor for Holzheim. Distinguished Service Cross for silencing the Flak guns in Holland. Silver Star for leading 18 lost paratroopers 40 miles through enemy territory in Normandy. Bronze Star for meritorious service. 3 Purple Hearts, 1 for each time he was wounded and kept fighting. Plus foreign awards. The French Croix de Guerre, Belgian Order of Leopold, Dutch Military Order of William, their highest bravery decoration, equivalent to the Victoria Cross. Leonard Funk is the most decorated paratrooper of the entire war, more hardware than almost any other man who jumped with the 82nd or 101st. The war ends. Funk goes home to Pennsylvania. He doesn't write a book, doesn't hit the lecture circuit, doesn't turn the medal into a political career or Hollywood meetings. No parades in his honor, no endorsements. He goes back to Mackey Sport, gets a job with the Veterans Administration. Same kind of quiet desk work he was doing before the war, processing claims, cutting red tape, helping other veterans navigate the bureaucracy they earned with blood. For 27 years he sits at a desk in the Pittsburgh regional office, rises to division chief. Good pay, steady hours, pension waiting. His wife Gertrude stays with him. They raise 2 daughters in a modest working-class neighborhood. The Medal of Honor hangs in a case somewhere in the house, next to the Distinguished Service Cross, the Silver Star, the foreign medals. He almost never talks about them. When old friends or curious neighbors ask about the war, about Holzheim, about the laughing and the 90 Germans, Funk shrugs. Did what I had to do, he says. That's it. End of story. November 20th, 1992. Braddock Hills, Pennsylvania. Leonard Alfred Funk Jr. dies of cancer at age 76. He's buried at Arlington National Cemetery, Section 35, grave 23,734. Among thousands of American heroes, at the time of his death, he is the last surviving Medal of Honor recipient from the 82nd Airborne in World War II. They name a fitness center after him at Fort Bragnell, Fort Liberty. A highway in Pennsylvania carries his name. In 2023, a post office in McKeesport is dedicated in his memory, but most people have never heard of him. They know Audie Murphy, the baby-faced infantryman turned movie star. They know Alvin York from the First World War. They know the famous names. They don't know the quiet 5'5" paratrooper who laughed in the face of 90 armed enemies and walked away alive. So what does Leonard Funk's story actually tell us? War doesn't always reward the biggest, or the strongest, or the loudest. It doesn't always go to the reckless or the naturally fearless. It rewards the ones who keep thinking when every rational voice screams to give up. At Holzheim, the mathematics were impossible. 90 armed men, 1 gun in his stomach, his own soldiers already captured. Any sane person would have raised their hands, but Funk remembered Malmedy, remembered murdered prisoners, remembered the men scattered across the village who would die if those Germans attacked from behind. So he laughed, maybe to buy time, maybe because the absurdity broke through, maybe because something inside him refused to show fear. In those few seconds of confusion, while the German officers stood frozen and the enemy laughed at what they thought was a broken man, Funk moved. 60 seconds later, he was still standing, surrounded by bodies, alive when he should have been dead. Courage isn't always a roar. Sometimes it's a laugh in the snow with a gun pressed against you, and sometimes that laugh changes everything. The story of Leonard Funk reminds us why the Medal of Honor is so rare. Only about 3,500 have been awarded in American history, fewer than 500 in World War II, and of those, many went to men who died performing the act. Posthumous awards for the ultimate sacrifice. Funk lived. He walked away from Holzheim under his own power, Thompson still hot in his hands. What makes his citation stand out, even among other medal recipients, is the sheer improbability. Not a planned assault, not a heroic last stand holding a position, just one man, alone, facing 90 armed enemies who already held every advantage, deciding in a split second that surrender wasn't an option, and choosing laughter as his first weapon. Military historians still argue about that laugh. Was it tactical? A calculated move to freeze the enemy for the few seconds he needed? Or was it something deeper, defiance? The refusal to give them the satisfaction of fear? Funk himself never gave a clear answer. In the few interviews he granted decades later, he brushed it off, said the German officer was yelling something he couldn't understand, and it just struck him funny. Tried to stop laughing but couldn't. Then things happened fast, but those who knew him and who served under him in the 508th say, it fits the man they remember. Quiet on the surface, but with a core of granite. Never raised his voice, never panicked, just did what needed doing, no matter how bad the odds looked. You see it in Normandy, leading 18 scattered paratroopers through 40 miles of enemy territory on a mangled ankle, volunteering to scout ahead every time. You see it in Holland, attacking a fortified Flak position with only 3 men because gliders were taking fire. You see it in the Bulge, turning cooks and clerks into a fighting platoon, marching them 15 miles through a blizzard to take a village without losing a man. And you see it clearest in that farmhouse yard in Holzheim. The laugh wasn't bravado, it wasn't show, it was the sound of a man who had already made peace with dying, who had looked at the worst the war could throw at him and decided it still wasn't enough to make him quit. In the decades after the war, veterans of the 82nd would gather at reunions. The stories always circled back to Funk, eventually. The old paratroopers, gray-haired, paunchy, voices softened by age would lean in and tell the new guys about the time a 5'5" first sergeant laughed 90 Germans into confusion and then shot his way out of it. They'd shake their heads, half smiling. You had to be there, they'd say, but damn if it didn't happen. Some details got exaggerated over time, numbers creeping higher, the laugh growing louder in memory, but the official records backed the core of it. 90 enemy soldiers rearmed and organized, 4 Americans disarmed, 1 officer with a gun in Funk's stomach, 21 enemy dead in under a minute, the rest surrendering. Numbers cold enough to chill you. Yet Funk went home and lived the quietest life imaginable. No bitterness, no boasting, just helped other veterans file their paperwork, raised his daughters, mowed his lawn. When he died in 1992, the local paper ran a short obituary. Most of the town didn't know what he'd done. His neighbors remembered him as the polite older gentleman who always waved from the porch. That humility is part of what makes the story endure. We love the loud heroes, the ones who write books, make movies, stand on stages. But some of the greatest never seek the spotlight. They do the impossible, come home, and go back to being ordinary, until someone digs up the citation and reads it aloud. Then you realize ordinary was never the right word. Leonard Funk wasn't larger than life in stature. He was larger than life in the moments that mattered. And in one frozen farmhouse yard in Belgium, on a January afternoon in 1945, he proved that courage can sound like laughter when everything else says you should be screaming. There's a photo of Leonard Funk taken shortly after the war. He's in uniform, standing at ease for the official Medal of Honor portrait. The ribbon is around his neck, the star gleaming against the olive drab. He's looking straight at the camera, expression.com, almost shy, no smile, just steady eyes that have seen too much. You look at that photo and you try to imagine the same man, months earlier, standing in a Belgian farmyard with 90 Germans around him and an MP40 jammed into his stomach. You try to picture that calm face breaking into uncontrollable laughter while death stares him down. It doesn't seem to match. And that's the point. The greatest acts of courage often come from the quiet ones. The men who don't talk big, don't need to prove anything. They just refuse to break when the moment arrives. Funk's laugh wasn't the laugh of a lunatic. It was the sound of a line being drawn. A refusal to play the role the Germans expected. The defeated prisoner. The man who begs or bargains or looks away. Instead, he looked them in the eye and laughed. And in that refusal, he bought the only thing he needed. A few seconds of complete confusion. Military psychologists have studied moments like this for decades. They call it disruptive improvisation, doing something so far outside the enemy's script that their training and instincts fail them for just long enough. The German officer had rehearsed this scene in his head 100 times. Capture an American leader, bark orders, watch him submit. That script kept him calm, gave him control. Funk tore the script up, laughed at it, and in the pause that followed, the officer's brain had to reboot. By the time it did, he was already dead. Those few seconds saved not just Funk's life, but the lives of his scattered company. Because if those 90 rearmed Germans had hit Company C from behind, while the Americans were mopping up the village, the fight could have turned into a massacre. One laugh, 60 seconds of chaos, and an entire company survives. That's the ripple effect of individual courage. One man decides he will not go quietly, and the course of a battle shifts. After Holzheim, Funk continued fighting until the end of the war in Europe. He added no more epic stories, or at least none that made the official record. He just kept leading, kept bringing his men through. When the 508th reached the Elbe River in May 1945, they linked up with the Red Army. The war in Europe was over. Funk shook hands with Soviet soldiers, posed for the usual photos, then went home. He never glorified what he did, never romanticized the killing. In the few times he spoke about Holzheim to family, he focused on the men who were with him, the 4 guards who grabbed rifles and fought back, the cooks and clerks who took the village. He always spread the credit, always downplayed his own part. That's another reason his story feels authentic. Real heroes rarely think they are. Years later, when historians or documentary makers tracked him down, Funk would agree to short interviews, but only reluctantly. He'd answer questions directly, never embellish, then try to change the subject. One interviewer asked him point blank, "When the Germans stuck that gun in your stomach, what were you thinking?" Funk paused, shrugged. "I was thinking I wasn't going to let them shoot my boys in the back. That was it." No grand philosophy, no speech about freedom or duty, just loyalty to the men around him. And that's the final piece of who Leonard Funk was. Not a superhero, not a larger-than-life warrior born for battle, just a short, steady man from a steel town who took care of his own, his younger brother during the Depression, his scattered paratroopers in Normandy, his clerks turned riflemen in the Bulge, his fellow veterans at the VA desk for 27 years. He took care of people, and when taking care of them meant laughing at death with 90 guns pointed at him, he did that too. The legacy of Leonard Funk isn't just in the medals or the citations. It's in the quiet way he carried the weight of what he did for the rest of his life. After returning from Europe in 1945, he married Gertrude, the woman who had waited through years of letters and telegrams. They settled in Mackeysport, a working-class suburb of Pittsburgh, not far from where he grew up. Same river, same smokestacks, same hard-working people. Funk never traded on his heroism. No speaking tours, no book deals. When Hollywood came calling in the late 1940s, wanting to turn Holzheim into a movie, he politely declined, said the story belonged to the men who were there, not a scriptwriter. Instead, he went to work at the Veterans Administration. Day after day, he sat at a desk helping other veterans men who came home missing limbs, lungs damaged by gas, minds scarred by combat. He knew the paperwork maze, the delays, the frustration. He cut through it for them, quietly, efficiently, without fanfare. For 27 years he did this, rose to division chief in the Pittsburgh office. Colleagues remember him as patient, thorough, the guy who never raised his voice, even when the system failed someone. He retired in the early 1970s with a modest pension and a life that looked ordinary from the outside. But every now and then, the past would surface. In the 1980s, a local high school history class invited him to speak. He showed up in a plain suit, no ribbons, told the kids about Normandy, about jumping into darkness, about leading men through enemy lines. When one student asked about the Medal of Honor, he smiled faintly. "It's heavy," he said, "but it's not for wearing every day." He never wore it in public, kept it in a drawer, next to old photos and letters from the war. Family members say he rarely spoke of Holzheim at home. Only once, when a grandson asked why Grandpa had so many medals, did he sit the boy down and tell the story's short version. The laugh, the gun, the 60 seconds. Then he changed the subject to baseball. That restraint is what sets him apart from many war heroes who become public figures. Funk understood that true valor doesn't need an audience. It happens in the moment, then you move on. The 82nd Airborne never forgot him. At reunions, younger paratroopers would seek him out. Old-timers would point him out across the room. "That's Funk, the one who laughed at 90 Krauts." They'd buy him a beer, tell him he was a legend. He'd shrugged, say thanks, and ask how their families were doing. When he passed in 1992, the funeral was private. Just family, a few old comrades from the 508th, a color guard. They folded the flag, played taps, lowered him into Section 35 at Arlington. The news made the papers in Pennsylvania. Small articles, local war hero passes. Most readers skimmed past. The world had moved on to new wars, new heroes. But the story endures because it's simple and human. A small man, impossible odds, a laugh, a burst of fire, and then the rest of a long, decent life. In an era that often celebrates spectacle, Leonard Funk reminds us that some of the greatest courage is quiet It doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs to show up when it counts. And when it does, it can turn a frozen yard in Belgium into a place where 90 men learn that one determined soul can change everything. Today, if you visit Arlington National Cemetery and walk to section 35, you'll find grave 23,734. A simple white headstone. Leonard Alfred Funk Jr., 1st Sergeant, U.S. Army, World War II. The dates, 1916 to 1992. Below them, the Medal of Honor emblem etched in gold. Nothing else. No long epitaph, no quote about courage or sacrifice. Just the facts. That's how he wanted it. But the story keeps finding new audiences. In books about the 82nd Airborne, in online forums where veterans and history buffs trade accounts of forgotten heroes, in YouTube videos, yes, like this one where people who never met him try to explain what he did in that farmyard. Every time the story is told, someone new stops and thinks, how do you laugh when death is certain? The answer isn't simple. It never is. Part of it was training, thousands of hours with the Thompson, reloading until it was instinct. Part of it was experience. Normandy, Holland. The Bulge had already shown him the worst, and he was still standing. Part of it was the men on their knees behind him, the company scattered through the village. He wasn't fighting for abstract ideals in that moment. He was fighting for them. And part of it, maybe the biggest part, was something inside Leonard Funk that refused to give the enemy what they wanted. Not his weapon, not his dignity, not his fear. They could take his life, but they wouldn't take his choice. That laugh was the sound of freedom, the last bit of control a man has when everything else is stripped away. In the decades since, military instructors have used Funk's action as a case study, not just for marksmanship or close-quarters battle, but for what they call psychological disruption and initiative under extreme duress. Cadets at West Point read the citation. Airborne students at Fort Liberty hear the story during their training. Instructors tell them, when the plan fails, when the odds collapse, when every logical option is surrender or death sometimes, the only thing left is to do the unexpected, to act while the enemy is still processing. Funk didn't have time to plan a clever ruse. He just acted, and the laugh, intentional or not be, came the perfect disruption. Some people hear the story and focus on the violence. 21 dead in under a minute. They miss the larger truth. The violence was the last resort, not the goal. The goal was survival for him, for his men, for the promise he made after Malmedy, that he would never let the Germans take him alive to do the same to others. He kept that promise, and then he went home and lived another 47 years without ever needing to tell the world how brave he was. That, maybe more than the farmyard fight itself, is what makes Leonard Funk extraordinary. In a culture that often confuses fame with valor, he chose anonymity. In a world that rewards self-promotion, he chose service first on the battlefield, then behind a VA desk, helping broken men get the benefits they earned. He never saw a contradiction between killing 21 enemies in 60 seconds and spending the next 3 decades quietly helping people. Both were taking care of his own. Both were what needed to be done. So here we are, 80 years later, telling the story again, because stories like Leonard Funk's don't fade. They wait. They sit quietly in official records and old unit histories until someone pulls them out, dusts them off, and holds them up to the light. And when they do, people stop and listen. Not because it's a tale of superhuman strength or perfect marksmanship, not because it's comfortable or clean, but because it's human. A man from a steel town, 5'5", 140 pounds, no college, no advantages, stands in the snow with a gun in his gut, and 90 enemies around him. He could have surrendered. No one would have blamed him. The odds were beyond hopeless. Instead, he laughs, then he fights, then he wins, and then he goes home and spends the rest of his life helping other veterans in the most unglamorous way possible. That's the full arc, not just the 60 seconds of fire and blood, the 47 years after, the refusal to cash in, the quiet mornings on the porch, the paperwork processed, the family raised, the grave at Arlington with no long inscription. Leonard Funk's story tells us that real courage isn't loud. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't always look heroic in the moment. Sometimes it looks like a short sergeant laughing at the wrong time. Sometimes it sounds absurd. But when the moment passes, and the smoke clears, you realize it was exactly what the situation needed. War asks terrible things of ordinary people. Most rise to the occasion only when there's no other choice. Leonard Funk rose every time he was asked. And when the war was over, he kept rising quietly, steadily for the rest of his days. So, if you ever find yourself facing impossible odds, if the math says give up, if every voice in your head screams surrender, remember a frozen farmyard in Belgium in January 1945. Remember a man who laughed when he should have been afraid. Remember that sometimes the smallest person in the room can change everything with one unexpected move. And remember Leonard Alfred Funk Jr., First Sergeant, Paratrooper, veteran, hero, the man who laughed back and won.